Thank you, Kimberly. I want to welcome the members, all the members, staff, and of course any guests who may be with us today to the October meeting of the Dormitory Authority. It is a beautiful day in New York City. I don't know about all the various locations where other people are, but it's just glorious here today. It's a great day to be outside, actually. There are any number of matters to be discussed today, but before we do that, the General Counsel is on the line. Because this is a teleconference and an exception to the public meetings rule, it is necessary that we read legal notifications into the record. Mike, if you're there, I haven't asked, are you there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On
Thank
March
you.
7th, 2020, Governor Cuomo declared a disaster emergency in the state of New York due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19. Pursuant to Governor Cuomo's subsequent executive order 202.1 dated March 12, 2020, as extended most recently by Executive Order 202.67, today's meeting of the board members of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, or DASNY, is being conducted telephonically and by video conference. Executive Order 202.1, as extended, provides in relevant part that Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, known as the Open Meetings Law, is suspended through November 4th, 2020, to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in public, in-person access to meetings, and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. The location of today's conference call and video conference board meeting is designated as the DASNY headquarters, 515 Broadway, Albany, New York, where I am located. Notice of this meeting has been posted in the standard locations that are publicly accessible. Notice has also been prominently posted on the DASNY.org public website. In accordance with EO 202.1 as extended and the DASNY bylaws, an audio and video recording of this meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website, www.dasny.org, not later than 2 business days after the close of this meeting, and today's proceedings will also be transcribed and posted as soon thereafter as is reasonable and practicable under these circumstances. I will now turn the meeting over to my colleague, Kim Ellis, who will conduct a roll call. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Kimberly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In attendance today, we have Al Carney, Board Chair, John Johnson, John Gardner, Wellington Chen, Beryl Snyder, Joan Sullivan, Jerry Romsky, Janice McKinney, Adrian Swarzewski, Brian Chesnicki, and Tracy Rowley. Thank you.
Outstanding. We have a full house today. Thank you all very much for being with us. And Kimberly, thank you very much. We'll start with the first matter of business. You all have had a chance to read the transcript of the September 9th meeting. Are there any recommended? Well, it's a transcript, so there are no points of view in the minutes. But is everybody comfortable that the transcript reflects what we did on the 9th of September? And hearing no objections, then may I ask for a motion to approve the transcript?
So moved.
Well, thank you. Who was that?
Johnson.
John, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Beryl.
Thank you very much, Beryl. All in favor? Well, hearing no objections, the transcript is approved. I assume there are no objections. Thank you very much. We will then move to the adoption of financing documents. There is a resolution to be approved. Mr. President, would you take us through that behind tab 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Yes, behind tab 2, we have the Greenberg 11 Union Free School District adoption of financing documents. We brought this to the board a couple of board meetings ago. We have got Gerard Clouser of DASNY, who's leading this transaction for us, Chris Reitzel of Nixon Peabody, and Vivian Rohan of Rohan Lee as co-bond counsel. Gerard, do you want to start?
I think he's on mute.
Gerard, I don't hear you.
Gerard, you're on mute.
Thanks, Gerard. Are you there?
Well, this Gerard could do it, but if he had a piece of paper in front of him, but he can't. So.
Well, Vivian and Chris, thank you for being with us. Gerard, are you ready to get this done? I mean, we've done this.
Gerard
already.
is on mute. Gerard, you need to
You're
unmute your
still on
phone.
mute.
There we go.
There you go.
All
Yeah,
right.
I apologize. I didn't put it on mute and something, but whatever. This happened the other day, so apologies.
Please, Gerard, it's fine.
Okay.
We're doing the best we can here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good morning. I'm presenting the Greenberg 11 Union Free School District, the transaction summary report submitted to the board, which approved the resolution to proceed at the September 9th meeting. Few updates involved. The transaction is going quite well. We had a PACB approval on September 16th, 2020. There is no TEFRA involved, as this is a governmental issue. Our seeker review was completed on September 1, 2020. This is a private placement with Nuveen Investments and Victory Capital Management as the purchasers. And co-bond counsels are Chris Reitzel from Nixon Peabody and Vivian Rohan Lee, who will be presenting the transaction. Mr. Chairman.
Terrific. Thank you, Gerard. Chris, Vivian, please.
Chris, you want to go first? Let me see if I find them. Oh, you're on mute, Chris.
Chris, you're on mute.
There we go. I apologize. Before you for consideration is the adoption of the authority's Greenberg 11 Union Free School District Revenue Bond Resolution, authorizing the issuance of one or more series of bonds for Greenberg 11, and a series resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $8,685,000 of bonds. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to finance costs of repairs and renovations to the school's facilities. The institution will continue to operate those facilities pursuant to an agency lease with Children's Village, and DASNY is required by state law to retain a real property interest in the project while the bonds are outstanding. Pursuant to an assignment and sublease agreement, Greenberg 11 will assign to DASNY all of its rights, but not its obligations under that agency lease. DASNY will then sublease the property back to the institution pursuant to the sublease agreement that Vivian is going to describe in a bit more detail shortly. As Gerard mentioned, the bonds will be privately placed by Roosevelt and Cross with Victory Capital and Nuveen entities. The general resolution is a new resolution providing for the issuance from time to time multiple series of separately secured bonds. The bonds will be special obligations of DASNY payable solely out of the annual rentals made by the institution under the sublease agreement. Payment of the bonds is secured by the pledge and assignment made by the general resolution of those annual rentals, DASNY's security interest in the pledged revenues, and the monies and investments held in the funds and accounts established by the resolutions. The series resolution before you authorizes officers to make the determinations described in our board letter, as well as execute all documents and do all other things necessary to complete the transaction. In accordance with your guidelines, the series resolution also contains restrictions on the ownership and transfer of the bonds to qualified institutional buyers. Turn it over to Vivian.
Thank you, Chris.
I will speak concerning the sublease agreement. Greenberg 11 Union Free School District is one of several special schools that provide education and related services to children, for which DASNY has been authorized to provide financing. The institution operates its campus to the agency lease, which lease is assigned to DASNY. DASNY will lease the campus back to the institution pursuant to the sublease agreement, which is a general obligation of the institution requiring it to make payments in amounts sufficient to pay debt, service, and related fees. The sublease agreement will be assigned to the trustee except for certain rights retained by DASNY and the state. The institution's payment obligations are secured by state building aid and Part 1 tuition from local school districts and social services districts that refer students to the institution. Building aid and Part 1 tuition will be paid into a special account within a state controller held fund. Annual rentals are payable upon certification by DASNY and are subject to appropriation. If a local school district or social services district fails to pay Part 1 tuition, state aid or state reimbursements due may be intercepted by the state education department. The sublease agreement also provides that the institution must continue to operate its program. If it does not, the state may take such real property interest upon the payment of the aggregate amount of annual payments due under the sublease agreement.
Thank you, Vivian. Are there comments from the members? Are there questions from the members? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
You got it, Al.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Sullivan.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Joan Sullivan.
Joan, thank you very much. Are there any objections? I'm sorry. Are there any Are there any objections to the approval? Hearing none, are there any abstentions? Hearing none, then the transaction as presented is approved. Thank you all very much. Christopher, Vivian, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gerard, thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
We're going to move to tab 3, the Corporate Governance Committee report. Mr. Johnson.
Good morning. The Governance Committee met yesterday, and the most momentous thing we did, I think, was to adopt minutes from the last in-person meeting that existed, as near as I can tell.
I think that's right. Actually, it was the last meeting that we had in a group around a table where we actually conducted business.
It hadn't had its minutes adopted, so we approved the minutes. But we had.
Thank you, John.
I would request the same thing at this point. We have, given the nature of where we are and the fiscal year-end rush of approving all the required mission statements and charters and principles and procurement and everything else that you can think of to make them current. We decided to break it into 2 groups. We did discuss several, and that was turned over. We had a presentation by the staff, but first I think that Ruben would like to make a management update about where we are on governance, given the circumstances involving at-home work and COVID and pandemics and all the challenge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate that. And in my president's report, I'll give a full update on DASNY. But as that relates to governance, one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that we, in this time when we're all working remotely, maintained our guidance that was given by Governance Committee several years ago around construction, finance, and other operations to make sure we're meeting our metrics. So we're maintaining those metrics. We're doing a good job there. I'm very pleased with the staff work. And from a Governance Committee perspective, I think we have met all the requirements necessary to meet the outlines that you all have as a board. So the staff's worked very hard on this. Again, it's been distracting working from home and other things, but I'll tell you, the staff's done a great job of making sure we keep our eye on the ball. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ruben. The committee did review the governance charter, the principles, the mission statement, and the bylaws and guidelines to pertaining the disposition of property. We will bring those to the board either in November or December, so we don't have it cluttered up. So that's where we finished. Is there anything else I need to mention, Michael?
Mike Cusack?
I'm unmuting. Thank you. Mr. Johnson, I think that's correct. We did defer action on the recommended changes from staff to the guidelines for real property, real and personal property dispositions to a future board meeting. But I believe that completes the activities of the governance committee yesterday. Thank you.
John, thank you. Al, thank you very much
Alice. All yours.
for all the work that you've done. This is, as I said yesterday in the governance committee meeting, these matters are they're sometimes difficult to address, but I think that staff has done a terrific job with your guidance and with your leadership of making it clear that these governance matters are getting the proper attention. And I want to thank you on behalf of the board for all the work you do to make this, to make it work. I appreciate it. And I think the board does as well.
Thank you.
All right. We will then move on to tab 4 and the President's report. Mr. McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I want to do first is just do a quick run of show so everyone knows where we're going with this. We have 3 business items that we need to take care of fairly quickly. We'll do that first. Then I will give an overview of a 6-month update. I thought it was important given, as John Johnson so rightly mentioned, we haven't been in person at all this fiscal year. So I wanted to give a 6-month update. I will do kind of a broad update. Then Steve Currow, Kim Ellis, and Portia Lee will give us some updates on their various departments. And we have a special guest, Matt Bergen, who's going to give us an update on the last PIT transaction, the $2.5 billion transaction that came to market last week. We will also go into executive session after that, Mr. Chairman, to go over financial, legal, and personnel matters on an update basis. So what I'd like to do first is turn to the project labor management agreement. Most of you on the board are familiar with these, but we do New York City projects. We typically enter into a PLA. We have several people on the phone who can be helpful with this, but this is a Central New York Psychiatric Center resolution to enter into a PLA for that project that will commence here shortly. The project's approximately $130 million. Brenda, do you have anything you want to add to that before we turn it over to the board?
Thanks, Ruben. Not really. The only distinction I want to draw for those who are unfamiliar with project labor agreements, the PLA that went before the board and was approved by the board late last year covered the entire New York City region, the 5 boroughs of New York City, and really almost any project that had an aggregate value of $3 million or above. This one's different. This particular PLA is specific to one project up in Central New York. It's the Central New York Psychiatric Center in Marcy, right outside Utica. It's a big project. It's, as Ruben said, it's approximately $140 million. But this PLA is specific to that project. And certainly if anyone has any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Brendan, thank you. Are there questions?
Just on the PLA, there was an interesting article in today's Post on PLAs. I'm sure it doesn't relate to our PLA, but it's certainly something to take note of. But that's just my little unsolicited comment.
Jerry, is it just a general article on what a project labor agreement is, or
it was related to the recent indictment of the chair of, I forget, it was the building trades or one of the various labor associations
Okay, all right.
And, you know, it was just mentioned in there. I just, you know, is it relevant to this one? No, clearly not.
No,
But
no, I get it, but still worthy of
Right.
attention. So, okay,
Right.
thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, before we take action on this, I failed to recognize who Brendan, this voice from above, is. Brendan Wolf works in our general counsel's office and heads up our legal work on the construction division. And so all the PLAs and such fall in his category. So I apologize to board members who might not know who Brendan is. Brendan Wolf, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
With that,
Well,
Mr.
I should have taken care of that, Ruben. I know who Brendan is. Brendan, thank you very much for your report. I should have said something about it when you did not, and I apologize for that.
No, of course. Thank you.
All right. So there is a resolution that requires the board's attention?
Yes, sir.
All right. You all have had a chance then to see it. Are there any questions for Brendan or for Ruben about the resolution itself? Hearing none, are there any objections I'm sorry, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the approval of the resolution, and are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. It is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board. We appreciate that. The second item is on our Underwriters Council list. Most of you know this is an open procurement. We've got a new firm, Parker Poe, who's asked to be part of our Underwriters Council team. We have an approved Underwriters Council team. Of course, we don't hire Underwriters Council, but we do have an approved list. I am very familiar with the senior partner at Parker Poe, and they do good work, and they're trying to do more business with the state of New York. They do a lot of work with our underwriters in other parts of the country. And so, Mike Cusack, do you want to add anything to this acknowledgement?
Mike, you're on mute.
Ruben, I think you've covered it very thoroughly. The only other thing I'll add for the board is that the Underwriters Council, because they do not represent us, but they represent the underwriters, are not reviewed in accordance with the same standards that we review our own counsel. And but having said that, we do require a submission, and we look at the 3 C's of cost, competence, and conflicts. And this firm received a review by and had an opportunity to present to the folks in DASNY who do public finance work. I participated in that meeting, and there were no objections to adding them to the panel. So this would be purely an administrative matter. It does not require board approval under the terms of our procurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that.
Thank you both.
Then the next item before we get into my 6-month presentation is just a quick update on 28 Liberty. Both Steve Curl and Jerry Romsky had a chance to go to the office a couple weeks ago. Glad to report we continue to be on time and under budget. I'd like to turn it over to Steve first, and then Jerry, if you don't mind, making a couple comments on what you all have physically seen at 28 Liberty. Steve?
Sure. Steve going first?
Yeah, let Steve go first.
Steve's going to go first.
Sure. Thanks, Ruben. Our project manager, Peter Jackson, had a chance to tour me and Jerry around a couple of weeks ago, I guess. The progress is certainly noticeable from my last trip down there. There is a fair amount of above ceiling work that's completed. In fact, the ceiling grid is in, which means a lot of the work above is pretty much done. We also observed the fact that the men's and women's bathrooms are pretty much complete. As far as the layout, the floor plan, wall framing is complete. A lot of sheetrocking is done. There's some priming and painting complete as well. The site was generally clean, which means the contractor is doing a good job from a safety standpoint. And overall, from our perspective, it looked like it would land sometime in late November, early December. So, we're going to be heading down there again in a week or so and can give another update. But at this point, it looks like things are going along pretty well. Jerry?
Hello?
Jerry?
Jerry, can we hear you?
Yeah. Anyway, I spent a couple of an hour or so over there the other day. Steve was very kind, and we went up. And I know that when we get back to the to work, actually in an office setting, that everyone will be very, very pleased and happy with the new location. I mean, a lot of work is done. I mean, I think they made great progress, Steve. I mean, I think, you know, the next time we get out there, they'll be basically done. I'm sure the board will be very, very happy with its views of the harbor. So, you know, I think everybody's doing a great job, and we look forward to it. And I checked on for Mr. Johnson, I checked on the additional work that was being done, and it's all being done. So it was a good job. So thank you, Steve, very much.
Steve, Jerry, thank you both very much. Gal,
Hi, this is Beryl. Next time you guys are down there, or at some point, I would love to see the building. I'm local, and
okay.
Next time it's convenient for you. I don't obviously, but would love to see the building.
Beryl, I'm in the same place. I was just going to say that the next time Steve and Jerry are down there, or Steve or Jerry down there, it would be great to know that so that I could join you all. I'd like to come down.
We are planning a trip next week, Al and Beryl, so I will let you guys know once we nail down the date and time. And if you're available, you're more than welcome.
Terrific. And our schedules are not as important as yours. So let us know when you're going to be there. If we can be there, we will be. But don't worry about whether or not you need to adjust your schedule to ours. We're fine.
And I plan on taking the subway there. So
you going to take the train down, Beryl?
I will. I've already taken the trains to other places upon occasion, rarely, but so
all
I
right.
will get the full DASNY experience and report back.
Terrific.
It's quite lonely on the train, I have to let you know. I was all over Queens last week at 4 CUNY sites, and many times I was the only one on the train.
I know. I have the same. Well, I'm not quite. I'm in Manhattan, so I haven't had quite that loneliness experience. But it's empty. It's empty. So
well, the E train isn't. The E train is not empty, but it's not crowded at all.
Steve and Jerry, thanks for that update, and we'll certainly continue to update you on 28 Liberty. We all do look forward to getting back on site, because that will mean a lot of things for us as New Yorkers. So we look forward to that. Now what I want to do is turn my focus to what I'm calling a 6 months presence report. We will retread some ground we've talked about over the last 6 months, but I just want to make sure that as a board, you all have a good update on where we are, particularly given the fact that we have been working remotely in the current circumstances. I thought it was very important to do this. So I will kind of start off big, and then we will let the heads of the departments give you some more detail about what's going on in their group. So the first thing I want to report is just, as I mentioned earlier, everyone's done a great job working remotely. It has been very, very impressive on how much work we are getting done. Kim Ellis will let us know that we aren't quite where we would have been last year this time from a billable direct bill hours, but much better than we might have expected given the current situation. We've also been trying very hard to do some things I think are somewhat unique to keep people engaged. A couple of weeks ago, we had a president's virtual lunch where over 300 of our employees joined me and some of the construction staff to go over one of our exciting projects up at the SUNY Poly campus. It's the first net zero dorm in the state of New York. And we did a 10-minute video presentation and had 20 minutes of Q&A, 4 sessions back to back, and over 300 people participated. It really was great to connect. I'm also doing each Friday a video update for our folks. What we do typically is have a couple minutes of an interview. I'll interview some of the staff about different topics, and then I'll just give a quick update on various items, so we're keeping in touch there. I've also been encouraging all of our supervisors to not only host meetings, but also have some casual meetings as well. And in that vein, after this board meeting, we will keep the Zoom meeting open for those board members who want to interact with staff on a more social level. So hopefully some of you will be able to stay for that. Again, in this time, it's very important to me and I think to the organization that we find ways to stay connected. I've been really pleased with how the staff has done that. On the headquarters, we over the past 3 or 4 months, we've maintained the ability to have 25% density in the headquarters. On any given day, we probably have 10 to 15% of the people coming and going. Everyone has their own assigned days. We have safety protocols in place. The building staff has done a great job of making sure that it is clean. As we move into the fall and winter, we are increasing the capacity allowance to 50% and making the physical adjustments. We are still waiting for additional guidance from the state as they talk about what's going on with COVID spikes and cases as we've opened the schools back up. But our hope is that by early November, we'll have another round of updates for our staff. And while we'll not be anywhere near 100% in the office on every given day, we will start to see more people coming and going through the office. So that's good to see. But the building staff's done a tremendous job of keeping things clean and safe, and all of our employees done a good job from a protocol perspective. We didn't have a voting line yesterday, but we did have a flu shot line yesterday outside the building. Annually, we make sure staff has access to the flu shots, and a lot of people took advantage of that, so that was great. So just again, not business as usual, but certainly business as good as it can be from our perspective.
Ruben et al. Question:
Yes,
when you say you have people are assigned to come in, or there are people who have assigned days to come in, how do you do that? How do you how does that work? If you're doing 25% and people can come or not come, work from home as they see fit, how do you decide who is assigned to be in and who isn't?
Well, we make sure that Paul Koopman's there every day, but other than him,
all right.
Other than him, everyone's assigned an A day and a B day. We've closed the building on Wednesdays for additional cleaning. Okay. And each person on their A day or B day has to notify their supervisor via an email system that they are coming in, so that we have someone monitoring if that's getting close to 25%. We also have some employees who are working remotely exclusively and need what I would call special permission to come in. So we're both monitoring it, and with the A day, B day, keeping the density, the maximum density down. And as I mentioned, we do have people coming and going, but as far as people working there, 7.5 hours a day, it probably never gets above 10% at this point. So we are monitoring it, and we have a good system in place. IT did a great job of putting a system so that we can, if we're going to show up at the building, do our temperature checks at home, let people know we're going to be in. That goes immediately to their direct supervisor as well as to the central staff. And to the extent it gets close to 25%, we'll raise our hand. But at this point, we've not been in that situation.
It's terrific. That sounds terrific. I mean, it's very meticulous. You've actually put together a plan that makes it clear that there can be people there or not as they deem important and necessary. But the system itself, the protocols are in place. Thank you. I had no idea. I had no idea we were doing that.
And one thing I didn't mention is the A day, B day were assigned based on where people physically sit. So that if you think about a cube of 4 people, you'd never have all 4 in the same cube cluster at one time.
Sure.
The A days and the B days. So several of the staff members did a great job of going floor by floor and making sure that people who are, particularly those in cubes, but also just the density of people walking past and forth and going to the bathrooms and such. We wanted to make sure that we spread people out pretty well. So they did a great job of that. We have another survey that went out a couple of days ago that's due back tomorrow, actually, where people are giving us their, school/health issues, so we can continue the A day, B day assignments and make sure we're making accommodations as we try to get more people in the office. So, great team effort by everyone, but it's gone really, really well.
It sounds fabulous, Ruben. Congratulations on putting it all together.
Well, thanks. Again, the staff did a great job. I really appreciate all the good work. Just to go over kind of construction and finance, I think it's important because since these are obviously our biggest areas. Our construction work, we had some good news is that construction has been deemed essential. So a lot of our projects have have been slowly but surely opening back up again. We had a reasonable summer at SUNY. Steve will talk a little bit more about that. CUNY's beginning to do more work and getting more opening there. I talked to the head of OPWDD the other day. You know, that's where we go into people's homes and smaller facilities and do work. So clearly safety is an issue there, but they've announced all their protocols and we're beginning to get that work going again. So from a construction perspective, we certainly have had a productive summer. You know, clearly a lot of that is projects that were being designed last year and so were implemented this summer, but feel very good about what construction folks have done. Our field sites have been cleaned, and again, I hate to be all COVID all the time, that's how it feels some days, but our field sites have been cleaned. They all have their own safety protocols. Rochester Buffalo offices have their safety protocols in place. And, you know, please report while we've had one or two COVID situations at construction sites, for the most part, we've been safe and been able to keep things moving along well on the construction side. So, you know, very pleased with the staff there. You know, Steve Carroll, as always, has done a great job of, you know, juggling and pushing and pulling resources around the state. Clearly much more difficult in this environment, but, you know, but great work there on the construction side. On the public finance side, we've done, you know, quite a few transactions for the state, as you all know. Our private client financing have been down a bit. So our overall volume has been higher than normal, but that's really been driven primarily by the state financings. But that group has been very, very busy trying to keep all those balls in the air. You know, from a market perspective, and get a portion, we'll talk a little more detail about this, but, you know, interest rates have remained low over the past 6 months. And while we've had some fluctuations in what we call spreads, and that is, you know, from an issuer's perspective, how much they pay over the base rate, on a pure interest rate perspective, we've been getting very, very low rates for the state and have been able to execute those financings well. There's been tremendous demand for municipal bonds in the marketplace. And so we've also benefited from that as well. So I feel very good about where we are from a finance perspective. Again, working with our private clients to see kind of where they'll be coming out. We also did several specific financings for folks like SUNY dorms that were to help them monitor and manage their cash flow issues going into this situation, going into the unknown. And I think those transactions have been very, very successful in their planning and organization. So, you know, the staff did a fantastic job on coming up with solutions for our clients. I think the state has been very pleased with how we've executed on their behalf. And so, you know, feeling very good about that. And they, again, just from a working remotely perspective, you know, that team has been very cohesive and done a great job. On the grant side, we have continued to process grants. And as I mentioned earlier, I've done a lot of work talking to state legislators. As you can imagine, if I had the conversation with them 4 years ago, grants would have been a big issue. But the work that was done prior to me getting on board, and certainly the work's been done now as far as grants outreach, has paid dividends. And a lot of the feedback I'm getting is that things are being processed more quickly from a process perspective, and that the outreach that the grant staff has done proactively to reach out to grantees that are not being responsive or haven't got things in, and make sure that if they need help or assistance, that has been well received. And so I'm just pleased to report that as I talk to legislators, while they all bring up their specific grants,
of course,
this overarching grants are too slow narrative has really diminished, and I'm pleased with grants, and certainly Sarah Richards.
I was just going to say congratulations to Sarah Richards and her staff for working through that, literally bringing down the time, reducing the time necessary from A to Z, soup to nuts, to get the grants done. I know, and the members know, that oftentimes the grants are delayed because the prospective grantees do not respond quickly to our requests for additional information. But Sarah and her staff have clearly made that a priority, and it is working. I've actually paid attention to that, Ruben, and it's well, congratulations. It's fabulous.
You know, she's done a great job. The team has done a great job. Again, you know, I'll take all the credit I can because I get all the blame, but it really is work that was done before I came on board. But it really has made a big.
It's made a big difference.
It made a big difference. And while we are continuing to process all the grants, of course, until we get budget bulletins and such, some of those grants are not being funded. But that's to be expected. It's been well communicated to the grantees and others. Which moves me just to a general kind of finance conversation. Overall this year, talking to Kim Ellis, prior Kim Nadeau, and others, Jeff Arnold's been great from a budget perspective. We feel good about where we are in this fiscal year. Our concern has been what's going to happen next fiscal year. Anybody who's reading the papers knows that the state's facing some significant shortfalls. We're waiting for federal stimulus. And what we have done at DASNY is taken just a conservative approach on spending so that as we look at next year, we don't find ourselves having spent money on things that were nice to have but not necessary to have this year in preparation for what could be, even though we have a lot of unknowns about next year. So we've been very fortunate in things like, our rent in New York, of course, has been down, probably saved $500,000-$600,000 already this year. Our travel has been down. We've had several retirees at relatively high salary levels. We've not backfilled those positions. So that has helped save money. And we're just trying to, not nickel and dime, but certainly dime folks to make sure that we're not spending money on things, like I said, are nice to have, but not necessary to have. And the staff has done a great job of understanding that. The state and DASNY have both suspended the 2% increase, cost of living increase that we had normally gone into place. We have communicated with our employees and with our unions and are working with them on this issue. Again, this is all prospectively making sure we don't find ourselves in next fiscal year in the trough of having hangover, if you will, from a slower financial situation this year. But I think we are managing that well. Again, I appreciate the staff working on that. And so what I want to do now is, again, in order, allow Kim Ellis, then turn it over to Steve Currow, then to Portia Lee, and finally Matt Bergen to give more detail in each of their respective areas on kind of how the last 6 months has been. Both Steve and Portia in their, and Kim for that matter, in their reports will also give kind of the normal monthly highlights along the way. So with that, Kim Ellis, will you start us off?
Thank you, Ruben. I'm pleased to report that I've had a smooth transition into my new role. I worked closely with many of the staff over the course of my career, so they've welcomed me with a warm reception, and I look forward to the work we can do together. I had the opportunity to meet several times with my direct reports and sit on departmental meetings prior to Kim Nadeau's departure, and I continued with such meetings in the weeks since. In recent months, we've seen retirements of staff in senior roles within the accounting and accounts payable units. Succession plans have been in place with staff and roles that will ensure a smooth transition. Several key staff within the information services unit have either already retired or are expected to retire within the next few months. And we're currently reviewing the structure of the subunits and transitioning workload to others in preparation for their departures. On the financial side, as highlighted in the standing financial report, we've received $1.3 million in financing fees through August against a budgeted amount of $2.5 million for the year. The percentage of direct hours charged to public client programs is slightly up at 93.8% against a budget of 92.2%. Our operating expenses are approximately $1.8 million below budget, and we continue to monitor expenses closely. We're seeing savings from travel due to the current restrictions on non-essential travel and the rent and utilities with the closure of the Penn Plaza office. We're continuing efforts to keep expenses down. As Ruben mentioned, we don't know the full impact of the pandemic to our clients in DASNY until well into next fiscal year. A few procurement updates. As you may recall, last November, we issued an RFP for banking and custodial services. In addition to general banking services, the RFP requested that the proposers offer optional functionality that would support DASNY's desire to streamline our processes, enhance security and fraud prevention, and leverage technology. The winning proposer was the incumbent bank, Bank of America. We've completed final contract negotiations and are in the process of executing documents. Board approval is not required at this time as the current services are expected to be covered by earnings credit from the bank. However, we are exploring several new services outlined within the RFP, such as cash flow forecasting, account verification, which provides protection from fraudulent payments, and a vendor portal to assist in the migration to ACH payment. Additional work needs to be done to determine the scope and cost of these additional services. And if any amendments to the contract or services bring the total contract value within the $300,000 threshold, we'll seek authorization from the board at that time. We also recently issued an RFP for an investment management system. Since our current vendor, FIS Global, formerly known as SunGuard, is sunsetting its APS2 application at the end of next year, December 2021. We'll need to look for a system that can handle our investment portfolio and provide the proper valuations in connection with our annual financial statement audit. Proposals are due back November 5th. Lastly, update on the KPMG audit contract. If you recall, at the December 11, 2019 board resolution approving the retention of independent auditors, it states that at paragraph 2 that DASNY reserves the right to approve subcontractors selected by KPMG for annual auditing purposes, and that such decision shall be made by DASNY Procurement and Finance Divisions in consultation with the DASNY Board. KPMG has requested that Vallis Vindiola LLP, a certified MBE firm, be approved to work alongside KPMG and Long Island Financial Management Services on next year's audit. DASNY's Procurement Division has completed its review of the proposed firm and advised that there are no responsibility issues to report. DASNY Finance Division is agreeable to KPMG's proposal, and I've had the opportunity to discuss with Audit Committee Chair John Gardner, who concurs. Absent any concerns by the board, we will proceed to add this firm to the team of the audit plan presentation for next month's Audit Committee meeting.
Kim, it's Al. Before you go on, have you had a chance to talk to the it's a WBE firm, I guess. Have you had a chance to speak?
It's a minority firm.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. MWBE or WBE. I think the firm is run by a woman, as I recall. Am I correct about that?
It's a minority firm as well.
Okay, cool. And thank you.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to speak with them?
I have not spoken with the firm directly.
Okay, all right. But that's on your list of things to try to get done whenever you have time.
Yes, I have a call with setting up a call with KPMG to hear more about how they plan to structure the arrangement, because they plan on using both the W that we used last year's audit, which was a financial management services firm out of Long Island.
Yes.
They're going to use both of those firms in connection with the procurement.
Thank you for staying on.
And can I say kudos to KPMG?
John, let me add one other question before you add. Kimberly, is this different topic actually? We're losing a lot of institutional history in finance, and I'm curious to know whether as people retire, people with a lot of years in, are you comfortable that we're able, sort of the overarching view, we're able to handle that? We're doing what needs to get done to be sure that even with the loss of years, that we're doing what we need to do to make sure that DASNY is actually up to snuff?
Yes, in connection with the accounting department and the accounts payable department, it's been known that the 2 unit heads would be retiring in the near future. So we've actually had succession plans in place to contemplate those retirements.
Okay, terrific. That's terrific. John, I'm sorry, please.
No, I wanted to mention kudos to KPMG for listening to us and bringing this new firm into the picture. And
absolutely. And thank you, John, for your leadership in making sure that they heard us. I know what you've had to do. Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. And we will now move on to Steve Curl. Steve?
Thank you. I wanted to just give a kind of a very high level overview of what the past 6 months was for the construction division. But along the way, as Ruben suggested, I'll sprinkle in some updates from the past month. I think, the past 6 months for me were really about two things. Executive Order 202. I don't think I've ever used the word guidance as much as I have in the past 6 months and seeking guidance. But what really happened was the relationship with our customer agencies really solidified. We had to work extremely close with them on almost a project by project approval level to move these projects forward. Of course, there are a lot of outside forces. We had the budget bulletin 1223. We had New York City OMB. But the sense of the working relationship with the customer agencies on the construction side, for me, looking back over 20 years, has really never been as strong as it has been over the past 6 months. So, there's always something good that comes out of, a situation like this. And like I said, I've never felt closer to the customers. That being said, the past 6 months was just a litany of project starts and stops and pauses and resumes and, stop work orders and resume work directives and everything that goes along with that. So, it was very confusing at times, quite frustrating at times, but I think everyone kept their cool and did the best they could. Obviously, the SUNY, the pressures to deliver for SUNY, as you start to erode schedule due to project halts and pauses, it was quite challenging, but our staff and our contracting staff and our consultant staff were certainly up for the task. And as I have reported in the past, we were able to finish 5 capital projects, 1 new build, and a slew of summer projects across the campuses statewide. With that, I'll add that now we were recently informed that the FIT project can move ahead. So we had New York State approval. We gained New York City OMB approval. And since that time, we quickly arranged for LOIs to go out to our 2 low bidders. There were 2 packages that we bid. Those low bid contractors were good enough to hold their bids for close to 6 months. And we issued those LOIs and we're in the middle right now of getting those executed, getting contracts executed, and getting at least the foundation work done and off the ground. So very good news on the SUNY front.
Hey, Steve, before you go on, I just want to compliment you and the staff on the FIT piece. For board members who are fairly new, this has been an ongoing project that has had some difficulty in bidding, and then we had the pandemic. But Steve and his crew did a great job of maintaining communications with FIT, looking at different alternatives, and I think we're all relieved this project is going forward. Sometimes when you're in a project for 2 or 3 years, the win doesn't feel as big as it actually is. So I just don't want to shortchange that FIT project, and Steve, your team did a great job on that one.
Congratulations, Steve. A lot of work. I don't know how hard you worked on it, but I've heard a great deal about the volume of work that went into it. Terrific job. Terrific job.
It's really our staff, and I can mention 3 or 4 names. The guys on our staff have done a great job. Incidentally, that project's been around for over 15 years. We designed it back in around 2004. It was over budget back then, and it kind of lived up to that over budget situation right the past couple.
I didn't know it'd been around that long. I didn't know that you all had worked on this. That's, what is that, 15 years?
15 years ago, yeah, it was around 2004, 2005. We went into 30% design, had it estimated. The project budget back then was 50 million, and we exceeded that. And now it's a $189 million project. So we're really excited, and no one's more excited than FIT. There's a couple of folks down there we've worked closely with that, they've been pushing this boulder uphill for a good long time. So
with their noses. Thank you, Steve. Thanks very much.
Just quickly on CUNY, again, budget bulletin 1223 impacted CUNY. Not only that, but
all right, guys, I got the key.
Not only that, but the New York City OMB, put a halt on spending city funds, and that impacted our CUNY Community College projects as well. The good news is we've gotten a couple of large tranches of projects approved by New York State DOB on the senior college level, and we are actively progressing those projects. And New York City OMB came through as well with a number of community college projects that are up and running. I mentioned earlier I was at 3 or 4 of those community colleges over in Queens last week, and just happy to see the staff back after it and trying to put these projects along. We are meeting with CUNY today actually to discuss an issue that has come up with regard to DASNY fee. We are trying to contain our fees associated with really all the programs, but we do have a cap on the CUNY fee, and we have been approaching that for a number of years. We will be meeting with them to look at alternatives to deliver their projects today. As far as mental hygiene, we got some great news with regard to some very large capital projects. You already heard about the Central New York PC project. We have that PLA in place now, thank you. And that project will bid early in the first quarter of 2021. It is a very large project. It'll keep a number of consultants, contractors, and a few DASNY staffers going for a good long time. We also received word that the Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center new campus is approved to move into design. We quickly brought on our designer, who we had procured many, many months ago, but weren't able to contract with until we received that approval from New York State DOB. And that is now in place, so we're moving that project along. That'll be quite a large project down in Mid-Hudson. Estimates are somewhere around 300 million. So again, wow. Keep a lot of contractors, consultants, and DASNY staffers going. We also have a Western New York Children's Hospital project, around 40 million, that we will be coming to the board probably in a couple months for another PLA approval. And that project should bid probably mid-2021. And there's a lot of smaller OMH projects sprinkled in there as well. OPWDD, trying to move those projects ahead. Obviously, occupied facilities, lots of challenges there on the community residence side of the world. We do continue to do work at their larger developmental centers, and we do continue to do a fair amount of work on the exteriors of the community residences, driveways, windows, roofs, things like that. But it has been a challenge to get back in there and really make progress on the interior of the community residence projects.
And Steve, I just want to mention that I did have a chance, as I said earlier, to talk to the head of the OPWDD. He also expressed, one, he's just pleased with the work we do and the relationship, but they also have difficulty from a hiring perspective, with the same budget bulletins we have. And so our staff and their staff are working more closely to see how we can use some of our resources in this interim time to be helpful to supporting what they're doing. So Tim McGrath and others are doing a great job on that side, making sure that not only are we keeping busy and productive, but also we help our clients. So just want to give a quick update on that.
Thanks. And Ruben also had a chance to speak with the Commissioner of OASIS. The good news for DASNY there is that their allocated spending for the coming fiscal year is actually double what it was last year. So there should be a fair amount of new OASIS work coming our way. Many of those projects are what we refer to as modified service, meaning DASNY doesn't necessarily hold the contracts for design and construction, but we do a whole lot of work for them with regard to construction administration and really design review of concepts and approval. So that's some very good news for us. Just quickly on the NYCHA front, we finished the security portfolio. We've got one project left with regards to procuring and installing appliances. On the quality of life side, there were 47 projects. 25 of those are now complete. 31 are in construction, and there's just one left in procurement. So we're winding down the NYCHA $100 million appropriation that DASNY received a few years back. And similarly on the Gozer side, of 40 projects, we have 5 still in design, 8 in procurement, 19 in construction, and 5 substantially complete with 3 on hold. So a lot of those projects are moving forward. Kate Seeley-Kirk has done a great job for DASNY, advancing that portfolio. And Caroline certainly pitches in when we get into any kind of political trouble.
Caroline, if you're on the line, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Just quickly on Moynihan and Javits, those 2 projects are beginning to wind down. There's an extremely heavy push to get Moynihan finished by this December. We are, the permitting entity for that project. I visited it last week. Still a very heavy labor force. Our code guys have done a tremendous job trying to push that one across the finish line. And similarly with Javits, that'll land sometime in 2021, probably the first quarter, second quarter.
Steve, might there be an opportunity for some of us to visit Moynihan with you sometime between now and the end of the year?
Absolutely.
I'd love that. I would love to do that. And I invite all the members, particularly the members in New York City, to join that group if we can do it.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I need to ask you though, if you're able to keep up with us, we're going to hit 3 or 4 sites. We can get to 28 Liberty, Javits, and Moynihan all in one day. So,
I can do it. I think.
We got an active day there. We'll have an active day. Right?
It's a busy day.
Everybody comes prepared. Keep moving.
Absolutely. Right. Do I have to wear hip boots? I've had to do that in the past.
No, we're out of the month.
We'll have a hard hat for you though.
Okay.
We'll have all the right PPE.
And I haven't taken off sneakers since the pandemic, so I'm sad.
Good for you.
Are they steel toe sneakers or?
No, but if you have my size, I'm game.
Right. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so just that's kind of a high-level construction update. Just a couple of other real quick things. We are out there beating the bushes trying to bring in some new work. You've heard me speak a little bit about West Point and DCAS. We have 2 projects at West Point now in design. West Point has asked us to advance 4 additional projects through design for them. It's a little tricky navigating West Point with regard to their contracting demands, but we're doing the best we can. Our legal group has certainly pitched in and helped with those discussions with West Point, and a lot of credit goes to Kay Edwards, who's been on the front lines for DASNY on that. As far
Steve,
as
it's Al again. I don't know anything about the West Point project, and forgive me, I probably should. I don't. Might we talk briefly after this meeting or sometime soon about what we're doing there?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We're also trying to get.
Excuse me, this is John Johnson. Speaking of West Point, I don't know anything about it either, but I don't need a special discussion. But I am curious, is this military construction or academic construction?
Well, the first 2
are they different at West Point?
Well, I don't know how the federal government works. I guess I'm wondering, I really don't care about that as much as I'm curious as if there's an opportunity for the authority at Fort Drum, where they still do an enormous amount.
I see. Okay. All right.
I don't know if I can answer the Fort
Drum. I don't expect an answer to that. It's just an observation.
My recollection that the authorizing legislation only spoke to West Point. That goes way back.
Is that you, Gerard?
This is Paul. Sorry, it's Paul.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Paul.
And just at a very high level at West Point, they asked us to come down and take a look at 2 bridge projects out on one of their training areas. So we are renovating one and replacing a second. As far as the 4 additional projects, those are projects that include building facade and roof work. They have a lot of work. They had a $30 million barracks, renovation project. They're redoing parts of their football stadium. They typically use the Army Corps of Engineers, or they procure themselves. But they are very interested in DASNY coming down there and making an impact and helping them to spend their dollars. It is all federal.
Outstanding. It's outstanding.
So,
Well, keep us posted, please.
Will do. And one last marketing update. Mike Stabulus and I had a chance to speak to the New York City Health and Hospitals Group on September 21st. We've done in the past a whole lot of HHC work. Now they are H&H.
No. It's H plus H.
H plus H. Yep. They've replaced a bunch of their facility staff that we've worked with in the past. We do know a couple of folks in their group, one of which is an ex-DASNY project manager. So we're trying to work our way back in there and make an impact for them.
Thanks, Steve.
The only other thing I'll update you on is just our project management system. We are back at bringing that system up from an implementation standpoint. We're currently working both internally and with our outside consultant on a number of different areas of that system. We continue to anticipate a first quarter 2021 live processing date. So with that, Ruben, I think I'm all set.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. That's a great update, and I think it is very helpful to give the board that context. Next, we'll move on to Portia Lee and Matt Bergen. Before we do that, most people know that my background is public finance, and so I have quite candidly kibitzed more in the public finance group than any other. But I can tell you that over the past 6 months, they have been challenged to come up with solutions for clients, to pay close attention to the market, and have done a fantastic job. I've been very, very impressed. And most of you may remember that Matt Bergen was promoted not too long ago, and he's just really taken over that role of being our market guy. We call him the bad guy in the pricing world. But he's done a great job of keeping up to date on the markets. He and I communicate fairly regularly about kind of what's going on. And I'm just very pleased with Portia and her staff, the work they have done, and this environment, particularly with the state financings and the uncertainty with ratings and other things, it's really been a difficult period, and they've done a seamlessly. So I just want to highlight that work. And so with that, Portia, don't let me down with your presentation.
No pressure.
Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that. And I do want to say, I think the staff has just done a tremendous job over this past 6 months in terms of moving the deals along and really just not missing a beat. So during the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we closed 16 financings for a total par amount of $5.9 billion. Just by
Congratulations, Portia. That's terrific. That's just terrific.
Yeah, thank you. Just by way of comparison, in the previous fiscal year, DASNY completed 25 financings totaling $9.8 billion. And as you know, that was a banner year.
Extraordinary.
So the current fiscal year activity reflects both public and private issuance. We did 6 financings on behalf of private higher education clients. We did 2 financings on behalf of private healthcare clients, 5 financings on behalf of BOCES, school districts, IAC, and NYSARC. We had 1 SUNY dorms transaction, and then the 2 PIT note transactions. One thing I would note is that the dollar amount of financings in the first half of the year is exceptionally large, really as a result of the $4.4 billion in the 2 PIT note transactions. For the first 6 months of the fiscal year on the TELP side.
Hey, Portia, before we move to TELP, I do want to mention that the SUNY dorm transaction was nominated for Deal of the Year for the bond buyer. There are a lot of great deals done this year, so I'm not sure we'll actually win it, but certainly, great to be nominated. I just wanted to highlight that for the board.
I'm sorry, Ruben. Help me to understand what that means. I don't deal of the year. I don't know about that. I don't know what the significance is.
So for those board members who are not as involved in the bond business, the bond buyer is our industry rag, if you will. They
sure.
cover the municipal bond market, and every year they pick several transactions to be what they call deal of the year in different categories. And so you have to be nominated by either an issuer or an investment bank. They then, whoever nominates you has to submit a pretty extensive review of the transaction.
Really?
And then at the end of the year, the bond buyer will award a deal of the year. And so you can imagine how many deals are done throughout this country in any given year. So being even nominated puts you in an exclusive category.
Big deal. Big deal.
Yeah, big deal. So again, I don't, Porsche kind of ran past that deal fairly quickly, but I just wanted to let people know that it was in fact nominated as deal of the year. So.
Fingers crossed. And as you say, being nominated sounds like it's a huge deal. Congratulations on that, no matter what happens.
No doubt about it. Sorry about that, Porsche. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. For the first 6 months of the fiscal year, on the TELP side, we closed one TELP transaction totaling $3.9 million. And that's as compared to the previous fiscal year where we completed 3 transactions totaling a little bit more than $46 million. Just going back, just highlighting some of the work that we've done and following up on Ruben's comment, some of I think the most gratifying work that we did in this last 6 months really was assisting our clients during COVID, both on the public and private side. So as you know, we did the 2 PIT note transactions to assist the state. We also did the line of credit financing to assist the state, the SUNY dorms restructuring, and the New York Institute of Technology restructuring. And, all of that work really occurred in the spring and in the early summer. Took a lot of effort on behalf of the staff, but again, I think was really tremendously gratifying and, similar to maybe something that Steve has said, helped to, cement our relationships and really demonstrate the partnership that we have with our clients. Just a couple of things as far as market trends are concerned. With rates that are remaining at historically low levels, many of the financings that we did in the 6-month period included a refunding component to provide savings or to restructure existing bonds. 7 of the 16 of the financings that we did in the fiscal year had a refunding component. That compares to the previous year where 16 out of the 25 financings had a refunding component. One other trend that I like to note is taxable bonds. Muni taxable bonds have become more common, with some clients choosing to issue taxable municipal bonds through DASNY to advance refund outstanding bonds or to provide more flexibility when issuing new money bonds. Overall, I would say as far as our issuance activity is concerned, that over the last really year and a half, we've seen good feedback regarding DASNY's policy changes and initiatives to better serve our private clients and to undertake process improvements and efficiencies. So that includes our market-based approach to security, streamlined requisitioning documents, model documents, including our bond purchase agreements. And this has really been, an effort by all of the staff within DASNY, public finance and portfolio monitoring, finance, as well as legal, really working hand in hand to try to make our process quicker and more efficient, more customer friendly. Having said that, our future issuance, I want to say, is expected to be limited in the second half of the fiscal year for our private clients, given all that's going on with COVID-19, the impact that that's having, and the importance of our clients keeping their attention front and center on COVID-19 and their ability to deal with that from an operational perspective. Also, there are a limited amount of current fundings that are in the pipeline. So I think we're expecting that the issuance going forward will be a bit muted on the private client side. Having gone through sort of all of the activity that we've seen in this 6-month period, I will say that the PIC deal that we just brought to market last week fell outside of the reporting period. So what I'm going to do is just turn it over to Matt to talk about that transaction since we took the bids on that last week. Thank you, Matt.
Portia, thank you.
Thank you, Portia, and good morning, everyone. I do hope everyone's doing well, and I do look forward to meeting and seeing everyone in person. It seems like it's been a while since we've had this in-person meetings. To give an update on the authorization, at the September 9th meeting, we did receive an approval for $3 billion under either the PIT or sales tax program. We ultimately issued $2.48 billion under the PIT program, and it was done on a competitive basis. Of the $2.48 billion in bonds, $2.43 billion was tax exempt, and only about $49 million or so was taxable. So the bulk of the loan was on a tax exempt basis, and it was a very successful pricing. We did achieve a TIC of 2.759%, the true interest cost, and that is just on the tax exempt side. Again, that was the bulk of the loan. I do want to discuss some of the factors that were going on in the market, as well as the ratings. On the ratings front, Moody's did downgrade the issuance. It had a AA1 rating with a negative outlook, and now it has a AA2 rating with a stable outlook. This did not cause, what I would say, any knee-jerk reaction from the market, because again, it went from a AA1 with a negative outlook to the AA2 with a stable. On the Fitch side,
Matt, before you go on, it's Al. Would you tell us why? Why do you think that there was a downgrade?
The downgrade is really all due to all of the pressures from COVID.
Are we talking COVID? Is that that could easily be the answer? I just would like to hear you say it.
It is the impact on the economy, the impact on the collection of revenues. It's certainly something that the market had baked in. So again, going from ultimately a negative outlook at a higher rating to a stable outlook at a lower rating doesn't cause investors to take pause because of the fact that it had a negative outlook. So in essence, that is telegraphing the investor community what, in this case, Moody's thought about the credit.
And I think Al, it's also important to note that the Moody's also took action on the city of New York. They had several transactions.
Yes, I'm aware.
And all this really is
the Water Finance Authority, Ruben, is another part of my life. But yes, I hear you.
Yeah. So it's all COVID related. I do think that Matt emphasizing the stable is saying to the market that while this is a difficult period, the rating agencies don't see a downward spiral like you might have seen in, not to pick on another state, Illinois.
Sure.
So I think the market felt good about that.
Well, but here's the thing, Ruben, and maybe we need to have a primer here. A downgrade, a negative outlook, downgraded, and then a stable outlook with the downgrade. That confuses me, and I'm sure maybe everybody on the phone gets it. I don't. But Matt, you and I are going to have this conversation at some point in the not too distant future. I'm looking forward to it.
And Al, I would think about it as if you're at a higher category with a negative outlook. I think what the telegraph is that higher echelon, you are slowly starting to erode from that. Once you get into the next lower echelon, then you're stable. So perhaps look at it
But
like
that
that.
just suggests to me that it's the next step is first a negative outlook on the lower category, and then well, I'm sorry. Let's not do this now. Forgive me. I should not. This is not for the board. This is for you and me. I'll look forward to it.
But actually, Matt, that last explanation was very helpful, because that was exactly what I was going to ask. What is the signal? And that was a good. Thank you.
And I agree. I absolutely agree, John. But I think that also merits a conversation. There are things about that I'd like to hear more about.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
One of the larger factors, though, was the supply in the market for this month. The calendar for the month of October of this year was heavy to the tune of $60 billion in munis. Jesus. And basic economics, supply and demand, tells a story there. But having said that, the market was still very receptive to the PIT credit. So again, even with the heavy calendar, even with the downgrade from Moody's, investors still stepped up for what ultimately was the PIT transaction on a competitive basis. I do want to walk through some of the highlights of a competitive sale, because I think it's important to think about, going to market with a loan the size of $2.48 billion and how best to execute that. In concert with the Division of Budget and our financial advisors, the way the loan gets executed is that it's, on the tax-exempt side, it's divided up into 5 tranches of approximately $480 million. And each tranche is broken out into specific parts of the yield curve. So on average, it would be 6 years, again, just taking the 30 divided by the 5. And on an average, the loan amount for each tranche would be approximately $480 million. And we think about that, why would that be the best way to execute it? And the reason is that firms don't have to commit as much capital, as well as firms may be seeking certain specific portions of the yield curve for their investors. So again, on the tax-exempt side, this $2.43 billion of bonds is broken up into specific tranches, capturing specific maturities. And again, although the tranches varied in size, on average, it was $480 million. What I think was important to note is that over the course of the bidding, because these tranche bids occur in half-an-hour increments, 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, et cetera.
Wow.
Over the course of the bidding on the tax exempts, the spreads from top to bottom got tighter, which to me is an indication that folks are sharpening their pencil and they do want to win that bid. I speak to the tranches on the tax exempt side. We also had a specific tranche for the taxables. On the tax exempts, we had an average of 8 bidders for each of the tax exempt tranches, and 1 bidder, and 6 bidders for the 1 taxable tranche. So the reception from the market was very positive.
Good.
Again, an average of 8 bidders for each of the tax exempt tranches and 6 bidders for the 1 taxable tranche, ultimately yielding a TIC of approximately 2.759%. So again, that is the way we work with the Division of Budget and the financial advisors. This is all set up on an electronic platform where the investment banks bid. The winning TIC is the lowest TIC. And again, I think it's important to note that over the course of the bidding, that the the bids got tighter from top to bottom. So again, people were sharpening their pencils. There was a demand for the PIT bonds, again, even in a calendar that had $60 billion for the month of October.
Well, congratulations.
And Matt, thanks for that. As I mentioned, in my kibitzing, I actually sat through every bid, and it was very interesting. But everybody did a great job, and certainly seeing the progression of the bids and the market demand was excellent. With that, Mr. Chairman, again, I apologize for having a longer presence report than normal, but since we had a fairly short board agenda and it's a 6-month period, I thought it was important to go over these items. I do want an executive session to let Mike Cusack brief the board on litigation matters over the past 6 months. Let Paul
Terrific.
Koopman talk about.
Why don't we just go there? Are there other questions? We've heard from staff, Kimberly, Steve, Portia, and Matt. Are there questions for any of the staff folk who have just presented? Hearing none, then, may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss financial and, credit history of particular corporations, proposed, pending, or current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons. May I have a motion, please?
This is Joan Sullivan. I make the motion.
Thank you very much, Joan. Is there a second?
Second by Wellington.
Thank you, Wellington. I won't ask for the ayes or the nays. If there is no objection, we will go directly into executive session. Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Outstanding. Kimberly, thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before? Oh, I'm sorry. The record should reflect that we've just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the public session. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. This is Wellington.
Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. The meeting, hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned unanimously. Now, we're going to stay on the phone